I volunteered to give my story because I feel it's really important for this issue. When most of us think of trafficking, human trafficking, we think of, oh, it's happening internationally. You know, young girls and children are being brought over from Eastern Europe, they're being brought from Africa, they're being brought from, you know, Eastern Asia. We don't think of it as something that happens domestically, you know, maybe between states or between cities or even just locally without anyone being moved to another location at all. You know, it can be as simple as a boyfriend just gradually brainwashing a girlfriend. I know before it happened to me, I always assumed it was just an international thing. I never really thought about it as much of it, you know, as a domestic issue, but it really is. In my case, what happened was when I was in my 20s, I was living out of state, going to college, eventually met this young man about my age, actually. We began seeing each other, and it started out as just a regular boyfriend-girlfriend type relationship. But over time, he gradually was sort of brainwashing me. These guys start out with, oh, asking you to do something a little different in bed that isn't too strange, but a little bit kind of strange. You know, it just starts out real innocently with wanting to maybe take photographs of you, and then eventually it progresses to, hey, let's put these online and see if we can get some attention, and then it progresses to, well, we could make some extra money, let's see if we can put something together. And so it's a very, you know, in my circumstance, it was a very gradual process over a number of years of just leading me right into it. At the time, I just felt really lost, and it's similar to what a woman goes through when she's in an abusive situation, like a domestic abuse, where she keeps taking him back because she thinks that he'll change, that he loves her, and he needs help. She needs to help him, you know, work through his issues. And it was similar with my situation. I felt like he has my best interests at heart. He knows I'm struggling a little bit financially, and he wants to help me. He's looking out for me. And that's, you know, that's the kind of mentality I think young women especially get trapped into in these relationships, especially if there's like a, you know, an emotional bond there. That was my situation, and that's how it started. But he also trained me into writing the ads, doing the negotiating, and that sort of thing. So it started off with him doing a lot of that, but then like training me and just brainwashing me. And it was a very gradual, slow, methodical process. Very manipulative.
How much of the income was actually turned over to you?
Not very much. Not very much of income. Just no. Nobody knew. I knew I was lost, and I knew I needed to figure out a way to get out of it, but I couldn't figure out a way to get out of it. At the time, I just didn't have the self-esteem to, you know, say, okay, this is crazy. I've got to get rid of him. I've got to, you know, just find some kind of job, any job, and get out of this. I was lost. I was numb, and I was in a fog. And eventually, when I was caught and arrested, nothing ever happened to him. They weren't able to find him then. Wasn't getting what he wanted from me anymore, so I was of no use to him. And sometimes what happens too is that it can be about the perpetrator wanting things other than money. You know, money's part of it, but in my case, he was also wanting stories. He wanted to know exactly the nitty-gritty details of what was happening in the sessions, and so that he could get off on that. Okay, one other thing I want to mention too is that when I was arrested, I was never asked by anybody if I was a victim of trafficking. And at the time, I was in such a state of just fog and numbness that I never thought to, even bring it up. I had told my attorney about, the abuse, and I think she just considered it to be, oh, she'd been abused when she was young, and that's not going to apply. And she never dug any deeper, and I just didn't have the strength at the time to let her know that, listen, I'm a victim of trafficking. Unfortunately, then what happens is, law enforcement or the courts, they don't necessarily always see these situations as trafficking because we're so conditioned to think of the international trade when actually can be happening anywhere. Didn't have a great big support system, and I was just in a very vulnerable position as far as being naive, seeing him as a boyfriend who cared about me, just totally had the wool pulled over my eyes. It just all stemmed from this abusive relationship that started when I was really young and vulnerable. As a teenager, I was date raped at 16. But something had happened prior to that. When I was 12, my father decided that he thought my mother was babying me too much. And so he decided that he didn't want her talking with me anymore. And so from age 12 on, I lost that connection with my mother. And so during those really vulnerable years, I never learned, what to look out for. And so being, the typical young girl, we all want to be loved and we all have these dreams about Prince Charming and this sort of thing. Well, we can be so easily led into situations that get out of hand quickly. No. I had to do the reaching out to get out of it. Toward the end of it all, to get out of it, I had started to see some counselors, and one of them suggested that I check into maybe getting some help from a domestic abuse center. And so that's where I started then, here in Oshkosh. For a long time, I was lost, really lost, and I was having severe anxiety, severe depression, suicidal. It was all going on. I was just lost. I knew I needed help. It was a living hell. Well, it can happen anywhere, in a variety of different ways. It's not something that's, this is the way it happens in Wisconsin, or this is the way it happens here or there. They're all levels from, kidnapping on down to the more subtle. If I were talking to a young girl, I would just advise that, these are the things to watch out for. If he's starting to say, hey, let's, get some pictures of you, let's maybe post them on the internet. If he's asking you to do things in bed you're uncomfortable with, that might be a sign. I think the most important thing for young women and men to know is that no one is ever going to take care of you as well as you can take care of yourself. And so nobody has your best interests at heart the way you do. Mm-hmm. And so to always keep that in mind, that anybody could have ulterior motives. Even if you think that they're close to you, they're watching out for you, it's not necessarily always the case. I don't think there is ever complete restoration, no. I think a person can come to a point where they accept what happened. They realize that it wasn't their fault, and they can take steps to, help end the problem. That I think that's what's helped me the most was when I started to take action to get these organizations involved and pulled together. Got the ball rolling with getting this extra legislation going that we're working on now, so that victims of trafficking can have their records cleared and move on with their lives. Because what this, having the charges and records can do is hold women and girls, young men too, back from education, jobs, gaining a job if they have this on their record. It just takes time. It takes talking about it, sharing, and just getting it all out there. Maybe connecting with other women that have been in similar situations. Just moving on, just moving on with my life, getting back into school, and creating a new future, a positive future for myself. I would say, get involved with going to see your legislators and helping to get some of this legislation passed that needs to be passed. Don't be afraid to find out when their office hours are and go in and, express your concerns.